Hi, everyone. Thanks for showing up to this talk. I'm here to talk about the Year of Open Science. So this is NASA's Transform to Open Science mission. We're declaring 2023 to be the Year of Open Science across all of NASA. And we really hope that you will join us in this activity. So the 2023 Year of Open Science, we have a team at NASA headquarters working on this mission. And it's out of the Chief Science Data Office. And again, NASA's looking ahead at some really big challenges. This is Dimorphos, the asteroid that we hit with the DART spacecraft. So if you thought the movie Don't Look Up was just about an asteroid, it's okay, we can deflect them now. But we're looking ahead at the science, and we're realizing that we have these huge challenges that we're facing. Some we know about, some are going to be new to us. And as we're struggling to address these new challenges, we know that we need more we science rather than me science. We want people working together. We want more voices in the room. We want to be looking forward. And to do this, we know that we need more people. We need more eyes, more brains with diverse backgrounds to participate so that we ask the best questions and we're getting the best solutions, and that we're not just inviting people into the room, but we're making sure that everyone has a seat and a voice at the table. And the evidence is really in. There's a lot of studies now that show that diverse groups not only get answers faster, but they get answers that are more impactful and longer lasting. That's the type of science that we want to be involved in. That is the future of science, and that's what NASA is here to support everyone learning more about how to do open science. So what can we all do about this? We can do open science. That's how we broaden who's participating in science. That's how we get more people involved in science. And open science, it's accessible, it's reproducible, and it's inclusive. So when you think about accessible science, you think about not just open data, but actually making it fair. So it's findable, accessible, interoperable, and reproducible. We also want accessible. We want open access to scientific publications. We want open access to scientific information. We want open meetings that anyone can attend. We want to be sharing as much information as we can publicly with anyone without any barriers or restrictions. We want reproducible science. So we want to be using open collaborative tools. We want to be using open frameworks and libraries so that we're not just working on a local infrastructure. We're doing reproducible science at scale. I keep seeing people who I haven't seen in a while, and so I'm smiling at all of them because I'm so happy to see everyone after so long. And we want inclusive science that supports diversity, equity, and belonging. We want to expand participation and partnerships and really lean into developing new pathways to science. We know that open science is a way to do this because open science creates research that's cited more. So if you're a scientist, doing open science benefits you. It will get your H-index way up for your resume. It has a bigger impact. It also increases transparency, and it's more inclusive. Part of the reason I started doing open science was I was working in communities that were incredibly diverse, and the science was more interesting. The questions were more fun. Inclusive science means that we get more collaboration, we get access to this hidden knowledge, and equitable systems that increase participation. And so what does access to hidden knowledge mean? How do you write a NASA proposal? If you want to submit to NASA, do you have an advisor that shares with you a NASA proposal that got funded, that was successful? How does that help you get future funding? Do you have an NSF one? Because NASA proposals look different than NSF proposals, which look different than other proposals with NIH or other funding agencies. So there's a lot of hidden knowledge within our science community that is passed down from advisors to students, that's passed down and around colleagues. So if you go to my Twitter, there's a link to a $200 million NASA proposal that I published on Zenodo and on the ogrants.org website, and you can see how to write a NASA proposal. Sharing information like that is impactful. Sharing information like that helps people learn how to write NASA proposals, get NASA fundings, and participate in NASA research. NASA is leaning into open science. So NASA's Transform to Open Science is a $40 million 5-year mission to accelerate the adoption of open science across all of NASA science, Earth, planetary, helio, astro, and biological physical sciences. We have 3 strategic goals. First, to support 20,000 researchers to earn an Open Science badge. So NASA's Open Science badge, Cindy here is going to have links that you can enroll to get this. This is a digital badge that you can click on. It can go on your resume. In the future, it's likely that it will be asked about with NASA funding. So if you want to be a valuable member of the research community, get your NASA Open Science certification and then use that to do open science and to get jobs. Double participation of historically excluded groups across NASA science. We are doing a lot of outreach. We are also doing as much as we can to be open and share information. We're holding events at minority serving institutions, doing summer schools and workshops to really meet people where they're at and work with them to do NASA science. We're also looking to enable 5 major scientific discoveries through open science principles. We know that open science has enabled major discoveries in the past 20 years, in the past 2 to 3 years, especially with all of the results coming out from James Webb Space Telescope. Those early release data are transforming the way that we see our universe. We want more science like that, and we're going to look to have some funding opportunities to do those high risk, high reward science. With TOPS, because it's a 5 years, we have a bunch of different areas that we're working in. We're doing engagement, we're doing capacity sharing, we're doing incentives and coordination. So what does that mean? Engagement. We are coming to conferences like this and we're giving talks all around. We have 13 conferences that we're attending this year to talk about open science, to hold open science sessions, and to really highlight how doing this type of science, which isn't easy, it's work, right? It requires work to share your data, to share your software. It's a little bit risky and sometimes scary the first time you do that. We're here to support you to do that, and we're here to show you how it's going to impact your science. With capacity sharing, we're developing this basic open science curriculum, and we really want you to register and enroll to get your open science certification. We're also developing showcase science notebooks that will show you things in your field that are going to blow you away with how easy and how fast you can do them using open tools. And we're sharing this all openly. It's all being developed on our GitHub in public, and anyone is involved to participate. And we have an all contributors model, so you'll get credit. We're doing incentives, so we're developing incentives with funding opportunities. We want to change the way that tenure, promotion, and review occurs so that it recognizes open science activities. Because if we want to change the culture, we actually have to change the reward system, right? We want NASA funding to also recognize open science activities. So what have you done about open science? Have you shared data? Have you done open access publications? Have you shared your software? Do you have your NASA Open Science certification? These are all things that you can write on your resume, document your open science activities as you go up for tenure or you go to try and get your first job. And we will be offering these workshops. You can go to the NASA booth. TOPS has a section there. Cindy's here. She has a code. You can sign up to get your NASA Open Science certification. And also we have a list of all of the virtual workshops, cohorts, and other events that we're going to be hosting where you can get the Open Science certification and start learning about open science. We're also doing coordination. So there's not a lot I can say publicly, but we are working for a lot of partnerships that will probably be announced in January about moving everyone to open science. So what are we doing? We are developing Open Core. So Open Core is this open science curriculum. It's a community developed introduction to open science. It's being developed by a globally diverse group of open science experts at all career stages. We're organizing Open Core workshops. So at 13 Society meetings, we're going to be hosting workshops where you can come meet other scientists, learn about open science together. We're funding through TOPS-T. This was an announcement that was due just a couple of days ago. This is going to be funding more module development. It's also funding summer schools and virtual cohorts. So if you're early career and you want to go to a NASA science team meeting, sign up for our email list because we'll be having opportunities for you to apply for an all expense paid to attend a NASA science team meeting and learn about open science with those scientists. We also have virtual cohorts, so if you don't want to travel, you want to learn in a group, we're going to be supporting you that way too. We're also co-leading an OSTP. It's the Office for Science, Technology, and Policy that is out of the White House. It is a sub-working group on the Year of Open Science. We're developing and maintaining an open science community on GitHub to share resources and community and work transparently and openly to demonstrate doing open science. We have priorities. So NASA has declared 2023 to be the year of open science. And we're looking at this to spark this 5-year activity. During that year, we have our curriculum. We're trying to train at least 1,000 scientists, hopefully a lot more. We're doing events, so we're engaging with historically underrepresented communities, partnering with minority serving institutions. We're having marquee events, hackathons, and also internships. So if you're looking for an internship, again, subscribe to our email list so you can hear more about that. We're establishing strategic partnerships with external organizations focused on STEM engagement. And with opportunities, we're again developing these incentives to pilot, including open science activities and evaluations of at least 5 ROSES elements. So if you're applying for NASA funding opportunities, you may be asked about what you're doing in open science. And we're partnering with societies on new awards that don't just recognize a hero scientist that doesn't exist, but recognizes teams and recognize how science is actually occurring and is looking to recognize open science. So a little bit more details about what we're working on with those specific curriculum events and opportunities. The curriculum, so this is an introduction to people beginning their open science journeys. So maybe you know how to share data, but you haven't shared software before. Maybe you're looking for new ways to share your results outside of journal publications, or maybe you just want to share in a journal publication, but you want to add an executable notebook. This will provide that basic introduction. What is a permanent? What is a digital object identifier? Those sort of things that will actually help you get credit for your work, and make sure that while you're doing open science, you're doing it in a way that we all understand and expect. When do you give people credit? How do you give them credit? When is it okay to take software and use it, and when should you cite it? We're going to be providing participants at all levels recommendations on best practices from people who are actually doing open science, these global experts, the subject matter experts. And again, if you complete this curriculum, you can earn a NASA Open Science Digital Certification. You can do, this is some of the skills, which are to create the digital tools to perform open science, like your ORCID, Zenodo, GitHub accounts, familiar with data management and software management best practices and resources. That may not sound very exciting, but it's actually critical. As you start doing research, understanding, well, what data am I going to be using? What data am I going to be creating? How am I going to archive that? How am I going to store that so that my science is reproducible? How long does it need to be reproducible for? What should I be planning for when I'm doing my research? And the same thing with software. Are you developing something that's just a one-off for yourself? How do you share that versus developing a community tool? This is a community-developed introduction to open science with inclusivity, accessibility, and diversity at the forefront. And this is that 5 modules. So first is this ethos, the philosophy of open science. Next, you'll learn about open tools and resources. Next, about how to use, make, and share software. So if you hear about all this open source software and you want to learn, like, how do you import a library? What is Mamba or Conda or Anaconda or RStudio or POSIX that they changed the name to? This will get you familiar with that. How to use, make, and share open data, and have best practices for sharing your results. You complete all 5, and there are fast paths. If you already know how to do this, you can take a quiz, get credit for that module. And then at the end, you get this certification. And so you can do that. You can scan this QR code here. Cindy will also be handing those QR codes out, and you can register right now. It's just a single email that'll be sent that'll give you some more information. And that's all I have for today. I wanted to allow a lot of time for questions, and thanks everyone for joining. And I'm leaving that QR code. So I'm going to look, I know what the number's at, and I'm hoping there'll be at least 20 or 30 more by the time I check again. Yeah, so Barbara's asking, she's saying a lot of this is organized at like individuals. Individuals can sign up to take this class or go to this summer school. What about team science? What about, especially with NASA, whole NASA missions, NASA teams? So part of that is through our summer school program. So the summer schools are actually designed to support at first NASA teams and then opening it up to later. But one thing that we want is we want to bring entire teams together to hold a science team meeting. So those summer schools, in the morning, you all learn how to do open science together. In the afternoons, you do your science team business that you would normally do at a science team meeting. And you're all learning how to do open science together. So that's one of the ways that we're supporting teams. We also have these virtual cohorts, and those, like things like OpenScapes, which is another NASA program, have been really successful at working with some of these larger teams to really advance people together. I think furthermore, when we're looking out forward thinking, as we start to talk about future missions that are still in pre-phase A to phase A, I think you still have opportunities to add open science experts onto your science team as a recognized person in that community who is a resource for that entire science team, because you're bringing together a large group of scientists that have different levels and different comfort with open science. Having an expert embedded in your team is going to be incredibly helpful as you move forward, especially as you're going through your different key decision points and you're going to want to be satisfying or looking at the new scientific information policy that was released last week from NASA. Thank you. Yeah, so the question was, what is the journey for how this all got started? So I'm from Santa Rosa, California, and in 2017, we lost 6,000 homes in one night to wildfires. The fire, we were woken up by our neighbors at 4 a.m. There was no power, there was no cell service. We didn't know what was going on. All we knew is that on 3 sides of the hills outside of our home, we were surrounded by fire, and we didn't know where to go. We didn't know what to do. And it was a very scary moment for our family. Of course, we had adopted a dog the day before. Great timing. So we got the kids and the dog, and we honestly just fled in a direction that we thought might be safe. And that had a huge impact on me as a scientist. I do climate and weather air-sea interactions research. I've been an earth scientist for over 2 decades, almost 25 years now at this point. And it really prioritized climate change and climate science to me in a personal level when it really starts to impact your family. We were evacuated for 6 weeks. We left our house with basically nothing, and at least we had a house to go back to. We had a lot of friends who lost their homes that night. We had in our kids' school, every class in that school, there were children who lost pets, who lost homes in that night of fires. So that really gave me this motivation to try and do a new type of science that was more impactful. The next thing that happened was I went to a workshop at HU at a conference like this, and I was watching a Pangeo workshop, and it was doing cloud computing using Python and open source tools. And they reproduced a scientific paper that I was incredibly familiar with that would have taken me, I would say, even being familiar with the data and knowing how to use it, it would have taken me about 3 months to reproduce those results. And I'm an expert in that type of data and in that type of science. We were doing that, and we were reproducing all the figures in under 5 minutes. And it was probably about 40 lines of code, because it was using these incredibly powerful open source libraries and the speed and the efficiency that science was being done at. The next step was I went to Ocean Hack Week. So I went to a hack week, was like, oh crap, I gotta learn this. So the next thing that happened was I went to a hack week, and I became sort of enmeshed in the open science community. And when I looked around, I'm used to being the only woman in a meeting. And I'm also used to meetings being almost exclusively white. And I looked around at Ocean Hack Week, and it was so diverse, and it was so inclusive and so welcoming. The questions, and I found it so, like, as a scientist, it was more interesting to me because the questions that were being asked, the people who were participating, everything about it was more interesting. They were bringing new perspectives, new ideas at this pace that wasn't normal in my environment. And it's just a purely selfish, like, scientist. I want to be in the room with the smartest people. I want to be in the room where the best questions are being asked. And what I saw was that people who are doing open science are the ones who are in that room and at that table. And that's the future of science that I want, a more equitable, inclusive future science. And so that's really was the start to kick off of this project. And I took it to NASA because everyone loves NASA, right? So NASA has put $40 million behind this.